Hello and welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. My name is Jeff, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Paul.
Yeah, hi, hello, that's me.
How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. Actually, yeah, I've still got a little bit of the cold, but
Yeah,
I have
you're
COVID
poorly.
tested, and it's not COVID, so you're quite
Oh,
safe.
good. Hurrah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
nowhere near you anyway, so, I think I'll be okay.
It's the illusion. People think we're in the same room.
So, we're not alone tonight, are we? We're
no,
joined
we are
by
not alone.
We're joined by a very special guest that we've been looking to get on the podcast for a while now. We've all been very busy, and we finally managed to make the stars align. And first of all, I just want to give a big shout out and a thanks to my friend Emily Swatton, who has helped arrange this. But we are joined tonight by award-winning playwright and screenwriter Ella Road, who Doctor Who fans might know as the co-writer of the recent Legend of the Sea Devils. Good evening, Ella.
Good evening. It's very nice to be here. I was going to shout out Emily Swatton as well. You beat me to it.
I don't know Emily Swatton. Now I'm feeling kind of left out. But hi, Emily.
She's a legend.
Wherever
She's a
you
legend.
Are. Is she? Brilliant. Well, she set this thing up, so she's got to be a legend.
Yeah, so she's already got a gold star from you. Yeah. So, Ella, we've got quite a few questions that we've put together tonight, and quite a few things have come in on Twitter that you might have seen as well.
Yeah, I had a quick look.
So, okay, good.
It's been quite a lot going on Twitter today, that's for sure.
Yeah, we put out the tweet, like I said to you earlier, and that just kind of went a bit bonkers quite quickly. I think people were very excited that we were chatting, so that's been really good. So, Paul, do you want to kick off the questioning tonight?
Yeah, definitely. Why not? So, Ella, yes, I'm very interested to hear how you got started in the business. So, because I think you studied was it Oxford School of Drama?
That's right,
as an actor.
Yeah, so that's how I got into the business, really, was through acting. And I'd been writing a little bit before, but not to show anyone, you know, like embarrassing, angsty poems.
Yeah, well, I was going to say embarrassing, angsty short films, been there, done that.
Yeah, I think everyone's got a folder somewhere of their teenage heart-pouring.
Yeah, mine's just over there somewhere.
Yeah. on a hard drive that you can't access anymore. Yeah.
But no, I mean, that had been like the way that I'd kind of played around with writing, really, and then some short stories and stuff. And it's a funny one, because actually if I look back, it's really obvious that I'd end up writing. But at the time it felt like a bit of a surprise when I discovered that I could. So it's like my parents are like, obviously it makes sense, like you were always scribbling away. But actually for me, I was just had my eyes so firmly set on acting, I hadn't really thought about anything else. And actually it wasn't until I trained and then was kind of in the room all the time making stuff that I realised that even though I still wanted to act, what I really liked was just making things, and that I wanted to be able to make them myself rather than just waiting for other people to make them. So I started writing, and was really, really lucky that that my first play got picked up.
I mean, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, was that
amazing,
literally the first professional piece of work that you did? You hadn't really written much before then?
No, I hadn't. I'd
apart from the angsty letters and
you know, maybe they'll get an airing one day.
Well, yeah, they'll come out in a book in 30 years time.
Oh God, I really hope not. No, that was the first thing. Yeah, I mean, I'd started writing a different play that I never finished, and I showed about 15 minutes of it at a scratch night, and that was the first time that I'd had my stuff performed by other people. I performed a kind of poetic monologue that I'd written myself at a theatre, just to see if I could. So yeah, but it really was the first kind of proper piece of work that I'd written, and it was a real baptism of well, not of fire, of like, joy as well as fire. When it went on, and I was really lucky to be paired up with a really brilliant director. It was a really exciting time when I first found out that the Hampstead Theatre wanted to produce my first play. I was over the moon.
It's fantastic.
So how did it come about with Hampstead Theatre? Were you sending the script out to people, or agents? How did one thing lead to another?
So I put on a reading of the play. I asked a producer friend of mine, someone I'd known from uni, who was producing, if I could have some money to pay actors to do a professional reading of the play. And I paired up with a director as well that I'd worked with as an actor, and we put on a little reading of it in central London. And I invited loads of people. So I invited some agents and some like assistants, and also I basically emailed the info at all of the theatres.
Yeah.
And also, you know, because I've been acting a bit, and also I'd had friends who did different creative jobs. I basically just sent a big email out and was like, is anyone interested in coming? And also, has anyone got anyone interesting that they can invite, basically, who might be able to give feedback? Because the initial plan for that reading was to get interest, but also was to just see if anyone had any feedback. So I included a little email address on the cards that I handed out, you know, in the programme, saying if anyone's got any feedback, then please give it to me. And actually, in the end, I got an email from the Hampstead Theatre the next day saying, do you want to come in for a meeting? So it was a bit of a rocket fueled process.
Because I know, having talked to Emily and things in the past, you know, when an actor's got a show on, they will often do what you did, you know, and invite agents and, you know, industry people to, you know, to come down and see them with the hope of picking them up.
Yeah.
And so obviously in your case, you know, it worked.
It did, yeah. I mean, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And I think I don't want to kind of make it seem like everything just came out of nowhere, if you know what I mean, because I think that's not helpful for aspiring writers. I had spent quite a long time networking, and that sounds like a grim word. I don't mean that in a grim way. I just mean like I'd been doing lots of pub theatre as an actor. I'd been going to scratch nights. I'd been meeting young up and coming directors, people, you know, my peers. I think it's the most important thing is to find your people who are your kind of age, your contemporaries, and pair up with them, because they're going to be the people that you end up working with. And they were the people that I invited along, really. And it just so happened that some of those people knew some people who were a bit further on in their careers, who then could actually help me to get a step up. So, you know, it's not easy to get people along to stuff. You really have to kind of push it. I think what helped with that particular play was that it was about something very, very specific. It was about this particular kind of idea about genomics, this kind of sci-fi concept, which I think is a little bit different from what most people write plays about. I'm not saying no one ever has or will, but, you know, I included that in the blurb, and I think that did help, because I kind of was incredibly passionate about the subject matter. Rather than just writing a play, I was like, I want to write this play. And that, I think that did also help.
Yeah, it is quite different, I think. Yeah, you're right. You know, a lot of theatre there's a sort of, you know, a style to a lot of stuff, you know, themes and you know, something kind of sci-fi is a little bit unusual, isn't it, for stage? So how did the Phlebotomist come about? You know, so you said you were interested in that sort of topic. So did you read an article one day and did it, you know, fire something off and, you know, give you the idea? What kind of inspired it?
I've been interested in it for several years before I wrote the play, actually, and I've been talking about writing something about it. And then I hadn't quite found like the story that it was going to be explored through. You know, because that's the thing. We're all reading interesting stuff all the time, but finding your way in is the hard bit. So I'd watched a TED talk when I was at university. I was dating someone who was looking at bioengineering as a career step, and so we were watching loads of these videos of biotechnology. And I remember looking at it and being like, that is fascinating, but also thinking, well, what are the ethical implications, or what are the kind of psychological implications of knowing so much about ourselves? And so I started to do some research, and over the years, I guess it kind of rolled around in my head, and then eventually it came out as a play.
So how long were you working on it for, and how long did the actual, you know, the actual writing of it take you?
The initial draft was incredibly quick. It just I kind of vomited it out. But I think if we did like a script overnight, literally in like a day, but then actually if you did a script compare of that document to the one that got performed, the story's the same, but the actual words are vastly different, because, you know, part of it, for me anyway, often I'll ruminate on a topic or a character or like a kind of relationship dynamic for ages, sometimes years, and then it will come out as a big vomit, and then I'll spend ages kind of chipping away at it, actually making it into a script, a performance, like something that would be performed.
That's the artist, isn't it? You know, just get the block, kind of get the rough shape of it, you know, so you kind of get an idea, and then over time refine it, chisel it away, make it look beautiful, and give it some life. And I suppose that's the thing with you know, plays and TV and stuff. When you see other people take on the stuff you've written, say the words that you wrote, and be the characters that you thought about in here. And do you have is there ever any massive differences that strike you as surprising? Do people take things in a different way to what you'd written, and you think, oh wow, that's pretty good, or why are they doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's not how I imagined it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a collaborative process, and both of those things happen. And sometimes I felt very strong reactions to the way that people have interpreted a particular bit of script or a line or an idea or a character. And sometimes it's a really positive reaction, and sometimes it's like a kind of feeling, because you're like, oh, that's not at all what I'd imagined. That wasn't what I meant. Yeah. But actually, and then you have to decide as the writer when it's important to intervene and when it's not, because actually sometimes, what you're doing as a writer is you are writing a set of instructions, but they're not. It's not like the instructions to make a piece of flat pack furniture. They're more like a kind of springboard of instructions. So maybe instructions is not quite the right analogy, actually, because it's kind of like
guidelines. Right? Guidelines.
Yeah, or like you're giving people. It sounds very wanky. It's very difficult to talk about it and with an analogy without it sounding really wanky. But it's like, you're giving people all of the different tools, and then you're hoping that they're going to put them together in a way that makes sense. But actually, you can't decide exactly what it's going to look like. And I think it would be wrong to. Particularly in theatre, I think that there's a reason why film directors and writers are often the same person, as in often people write films to direct, because the process for screen is quite different to theatre, because you are writing where the camera's looking, and it's much more of a kind of visionary process, whereas for theatre I'm very character and idea driven in the way that I make theatre, and so I think that I like to work with lots of other people, because I'm only a small part of this, and I don't want to decide where the eyes are. I want to hand something.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I suppose when you're writing for stage, you're not really concerned about what it's going to look like or what's happening or where people are. It's all about the characters and the drama and the emotion, things like that. But when you're writing for screen, there's a different kind of thought process that goes into it, I think, isn't there? For
sure.
You're visualising it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably really different depending on the writer, the different writer, and also obviously not everyone works across all of the mediums, because they are very different. I'm really enjoying my journey as a screenwriter at the moment, and it's even very different between TV and film, because film is much more, for me, visual, whereas TV is much more plot driven, and actually kind of learning what role you take as a writer in those different mediums is a really fascinating process. I feel like I'm at school every day, It's,
Really?
So you're saying there's this kind of not so much a conflict, but a difference between a sort of plot-driven story and a more character-based story. In the Doctor Who piece, Legend of the Sea Devils, you probably got both of those things together, because you've got an adventure story which relies on fast-paced action, moving from one quick scene to another. But as we all know, at the heart of that story is a very strong character piece, which had Doctor Who fans just screaming with love and adoration the world over.
You guys made a lot of people very happy.
A lot of people very happy.
I'm glad. Yeah. No, you're right. It's both. Yeah. I think Doctor Who's a very particular universe, isn't it? And it's a very particular style. So it has to be plot driven, because that's what people want and that's what we need. And there's always an action packed story at the heart of it. But I think because we've got these well loved characters, and these very well drawn characters as well, you owe it to the audience to marry those two things together.
But because I think big spectacle stuff, action adventure films or whatever, that's fun. But it doesn't really mean anything in the end if you don't connect with the characters.
No, you're right.
And it's like, I always use the Transformers films as an example, but robots smashing stuff up is great, but that's literally all it is. There's no character, there's no journey, there's no drama or emotion in it. But like you said, Ella, Doctor Who, it's kind of putting both of them together, and I sometimes think about Battlestar Galactica, which was a really great drama with lots of really fantastic character stuff. It just happened to be on a spaceship, and that's almost sort of irrelevant to everything else that's going on. So I think that putting the two together is vital for making this kind of sci-fi fantasy stuff.
Yeah, massively.
Work,
I mean, that's what people
long
really
term.
Connect to, isn't it? They you can feel. I imagine if you put a load of kind of what are they called? Like measuring devices on people's brain. What are they called? Those things. I'm a sci-fi writer. I should know.
An ECG or something. Is it?
Something like that.
Yeah. Electrodes on the face and stick a needle in the brain, kind of thing. That kind of watching.
But you know, like when people were watching action films, like obviously you get people's heart racing and. Also watching Doctor Who, you know, those fast-paced moments or the bits where the plot gets really, really quick and really gnarly, or where there's a mystery, I'm sure you get a kind of physical and neurological reaction. But I reckon the bits that really make something physical happen in people's bodies is when there's a character, as there's a relationship dynamic shift. And I would love to do some kind of experiment on people.
Well, do you know
you can't put it away, can you? You can't resist. I just want to experiment on people.
I think you've just had a new script idea there. Yes, we'll have a small credit for the germ of an idea on that one.
Yeah, just down the bottom. We're cheap. Don't worry about that.
Very tiny. Yeah. So we'll come back to Doctor Who in a minute. But one of our questions was science fiction or science fact in relation to the Phlebotomist.
Ooh. Yeah, what a good question.
That's Paul's one, not mine.
I mean, all of the stuff in the play is based on research of real science. So I suppose from that perspective, it's science fact. But I think the fiction for me comes in the way that the society responds to that technology. And so what I was trying to do in the play is look at a kind of extreme dystopian route that we may go down if people start to discriminate based on people's genetics. And I think that for me, it's not as fictional as it may seem, but I think I would be a real nihilist and like a depressive, which I'm not, I think, if I thought that was how society A is or would be will go down. I think we're not as far off as people think.
Well, I think it can be seen in stuff like my wife had like DNA kind of family history testing done recently, and you get all the results back of the stuff like you've got this percentage of this part of the world and this percentage of that, but things like this is your percentage chance of getting this disease and this sort of thing, and could they start telling you, well, you will die on this date because of this? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that it can be quite scary. She said, do you want to get your results? I was like, not really. I don't really want to know what's coming for me down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
so it's
fascinating. I think some people really want to know and some people don't, and that's another thing that I found really fascinating, is that actually for some people it gives them a sense of control, even if the things that they find out aren't things that they can do anything about. I mean, one of the amazing things about genomics, and I imagine the reason why your wife got these tests done, is that for many things, actually, if you do have early signifiers, you can take some action, and that is wonderful. I mean, that's an incredible opportunity for modern medicine.
That's a big positive, isn't it?
Of course it is. I think what's difficult is that a lot of the things aren't that accurate, and so it freaks people out. And then also at the moment, we don't have necessarily the capacity to preemptively or like pre-symptomatically treat these things. So actually it means that people just have this info and can't do anything. Or they have a kind of, our National Health Service, amazing, but also struggling, as we know. And my mum's a GP, and I remember having a conversation with her, and I was like, well, what happens if people get these tests done and they come into you and they say, look, I've got a 24% chance of developing pancreatic cancer or something. And actually, we at the moment, what she's supposed to do with that information basically is nowhere to kind of direct people. I think that for some stuff, you can actually preemptively do things, and then for some stuff you can't. But I think for me, what's super interesting about it, rather than taking it really literally, is actually just basically looking at what this incredible information technology does, but when you place it in a neoliberal society that we live in. So it's like this science is developed for good, but like science doesn't exist in a vacuum. And that's where science fiction comes in, right? Because you kind of look at what you...
That's right,
if you combine this technology with the culture that we live in, what happens then? And actually we live in a culture where, people are discriminated against, and also where people are, treated as commodities and are profited off.
Yeah. And where in kind of mass culture, something which seems... In one respect quite innocent, this idea of ranking things from sort of 0 to 10 becomes everything that your life is kind of pivoting on, right? Or your status in life.
Massively.
Yeah, just a number. Yeah.
Which again, we can kind of see parallels too, but you're taking it further, aren't you? It's it's using what's happening right now and mashing things together.
Yeah, massively. And I think health inequality is a really important political subject that isn't spoken about enough. It's actually, people's access to healthcare is makes a huge difference on their life expectancy and their quality of life. And if you create a system whereby some people have better access to healthcare than others, which does already exist, then actually that will create it. It will give them a different type of poverty. It will give them a health poverty, and that's incredibly problematic. But yeah, I think there's I'm still fascinated by that subject matter. I wrote that play a good few years ago now, but I feel like particularly during the pandemic, it all felt very, very, very relevant again.
Yeah, of course.
Looking at kind of people's relationship with risk and the psychological impact of risk analysis on a day-to-day basis, and that felt like something that was explored in the play as well.
I think we need to pick it up. I don't want to think we're living in a dystopia now. But that's the thing. It's like stuff like 1984, which you can sort of point. I mean, it's horrific the stuff that goes on in here, and yet you can still pull parallels to what we see around us. But I think it's important that sometimes we just do have giant robots just trashing continents and things, because sometimes that's just what we need, isn't it?
Fully.
Yeah, and it's so, and I'm quite surprised actually that Jeff was putting down giant robots just trashing each other.
No, I like giant robots trashing stuff. Yeah, but there's got to be someone in it that I care about.
Absolutely right.
And as slightly off topic, one of my favourite films, Ella, is Alita: Battle Angel, and it's about a cyborg girl, but she's got this wonderful kind of joyful personality and fascination with the world and stuff, but discovers that she's more than she thought she was, and I keep saying to Paul, he needs to watch it, and he hasn't done it yet. But it's robots and kind of futuristic kind of sport and stuff like that. But if it wasn't for that character, none of the rest of the stuff would be. I wouldn't have watched it more than once. Do you know what I mean? It's engaged me so much because of the character in it. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Cool. I will
check
watch
it out.
But I think on that note, but I think that a lot of but what you were saying rings really true for me too, because it's ultimately it doesn't matter how high concept the science fiction is or the action is. Ultimately, what we're interested in is where the humanity is within the story, and that humanity may be in a cyborg girl, but it's that we are as humans, we're searching for something which is idiosyncratic or hopeful often as well. And I think that even sci-fi has a bad rep a bit because often we do explore dystopias, but I think within dystopia we have this incredible opportunity to work out where the hope is. And actually sometimes I come out of dystopian fiction experiences, whether that's a book or a film or a TV series, actually feeling quite a greater sense of defense for the hope that there is, because actually we've been you're kind of having to work hard to find it, and it's always there. It's always there. Yeah,
but I'm very drawn to kind of positive characters and positive stories, and that's one of the things with Alita, for example, even though it is set in a dystopia and stuff. But going back to Doctor Who, the Doctor's one of the most kind of hopeful and positive characters out there, particularly Jodie's incarnation of it, which is one of the reasons why Paul and I love her interpretation of it, and you kind of, it's cinema and TV is entertainment, and you want to come away feeling something, and sometimes you want to be challenged and think about something, but other times you want joy and happiness, and that's kind of one of the most important things, I think.
I fully agree. Escapism.
That was beautifully put.
Escape as well. Thank you. I have written that. I've written it down here.
So quite right.
We've got a question here. So, how did the call for Doctor Who come through, and how did you feel when you were asked to write with Chris Chibnall?
So I got a call from one of the script editors, Rebecca, because we'd worked together before. In fact, she was one of the people that I'd invited to the reading of the Phlebotomist.
Okay.
And had passed at the time she'd been working with an agent and had passed me on to that agent. So we'd kind of had quite a lot of conversations about writing already. But she just called me up and she said, "I'm just going to warn you, tomorrow you're going to get a call."
Oh my god, that's
and she was like,
ominous.
"You're going to have to make a decision really quick. You're going to." Well, I think I think it was that they had worked out scheduling wise that they needed an episode earlier than they thought.
Yeah.
As often happens in TV, you know, you're having to manage all these different people's schedules, all the different actors and the filming dates and locations and everything, studio time, set builds, special effects, everything. And they'd obviously worked out they needed to shift some stuff around and that they had a gap, but during that gap they actually didn't have a script, and that was pretty soon. And so they'd worked out that they needed someone to come on board, and Chris wasn't going to have time to come up with it himself. And I think he also wanted another writer to come on.
And he's done that quite a bit, hasn't he? With you know, over his time, you know, people, you know, who've written stage and done you know, short films and things like that. He's been really good at kind of bringing new talent in and new voices. I think.
Massively, and I think it's good for everyone, right? But I think that, you know, he doesn't need to do that, so it's brilliant that he's championing those people. But I also think it helps the work because you bring fresh ideas in. And like, I think that when you're in the woods like that, I can't imagine what it's like to work on a long running show like that as the showrunner, to be honest, because you're kind of just in it all the time. You know, when I was working with him, he was working like 3 different episodes at the same time, and I was like, I don't know how this guy's doing it. Is he sleeping? I don't know. But Rebecca gave me a bit of forewarning, but because she said that they needed someone to say yes very quickly, and she wanted to give me a bit of time to sleep on it because she knew that I was pretty busy working on some other stuff. And I remember thinking, me? Really? Like, why me? And then I was thinking, actually, maybe it does make more sense than I thought, because I'd never expressed any massive, like, desire to write for Doctor Who. It's not that I haven't wanted to, it's just that it's just never been, you know, kind of genre-wise, wasn't necessarily writing in that area. You know, I don't some comedy and sci-fi, but actually never really married the two together. Not that Doctor Who's necessarily comedic, but it's because you've got that kind of lightness to it.
It can be comedic.
So, but no, I just felt really excited, and I also
Brilliant.
we were at that time when we were just coming out of the whichever lockdown it was. I think it was the final lockdown.
One of the many.
16.
I think it was the final one. And I was just ready for some fun adventures, and I'd really told myself during those couple of years, because I felt like I had no control over my life, like most of us, and I was so lucky to be working, but I really did think I don't have any idea what I'm doing, and like what the next year's going to hold, and I couldn't plan any of my theatre stuff, and actually I just told myself I'd say yes to everything, and it's been a really exciting decision because I've said yes to some really fun stuff, including Doctor Who.
That's awesome.
So it's very exciting.
So what was the collaborative process like on the episode, and what was it weird sharing writing duties with someone?
It was less weird because I'd just come out of a writer's room, like the year before, which was very collaborative, and so I was pretty used to it. I also think that I do quite a lot, even though when I write, generally it's quite solitary. I like being involved in rehearsal processes and like being in the room, and I feel like I'm quite a positive collaborator. I think that's where some of the best stuff's made, and so I was actually really excited about that. It's always really brilliant when you're given an opportunity to work with a much more experienced writer. You know, because like Chris really lives and breathes TV, and for me that's still something that's quite new, and so just being able to be in the space together, looking at how he makes, you know, how he works, was really helpful. I think the way that we worked, it's not like we had the script together. I wrote the first 3 drafts and then he took it and did an overwrite, so it's not like we were kind of both handing the script backwards and forwards, which I think does happen sometimes, but I think we didn't have time for that. Like, he was in the middle of doing a whole other episode, so I just did the first, like, we came up with the story together over 3 days, bashed loads of stuff out. I did a couple of drafts and then went back to Wales to meet him again for just a day, and we did a load more wrangling because we realised that structurally some of the story didn't quite work, and then I did one more draft and then he took it over. Right. So it's kind of co-writing's an interesting one. Like, because you're actually there are many different ways that you can do it. I think that some people choose to like literally share a file on a laptop and do it like that. I think I would be too much of a control freak, because I would be like, what did you change? Like I like being able to see.
That was different yesterday.
Whereas in a way, it's kind of easier if you just hand it backwards and forwards over time. I suppose the difficult thing is I always knew that because he's a showrunner, there's a kind of particular kind of creative dynamic there, whereby I make a load of decisions, but actually I don't get sign off on the final script because it's a co thing. Yeah. And the showrunner, regardless of whether they co-written it, almost always does a rewrite in TV. Yeah. And so you don't necessarily know. I didn't see the production script before it went in,
right?
But that's really normal. That's really normal.
Yeah. You do have to, in the sort of work that we do, accept sometimes that you are not always going to have that kind of degree of control.
Massively, and also his knowledge of the Doctor Who universe and all of the previous episodes is just astronomically bigger than mine, and so I needed him, right? I remember when I got the job, I was like, look, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to have time, because it's such a quick process to go back over the whole.
Can you watch 60 years of TV?
I said I haven't got time to do the revision, and he was like, don't worry, we employed you for your ideas and your some of the other stuff rather than for your knowledge, your encyclopedic knowledge of Doctor Who. And I was like, thank God for that.
Paul, I wonder what you think of that, because I think that's good. I don't think that being a fan has to be a requisite for writing anything.
Absolutely.
You don't. You don't have to have watched a show to then appear in it. And so it's about the talent and what people are bringing to it. So you may not have had a encyclopedic knowledge of Doctor Who. I don't think that matters. It shouldn't be a requirement for it.
No, I don't think so, particularly in a special like that where it's kind of self-contained. I think that if I had more time, then I would have gone and done some more watching and reading and learning, just because I think it helps. And I always like to be really prepared for the things that I do. You just sometimes can't, and you just got to dive right in. And I think that because I knew that we were going to be doing it together, Chris and I, it was a particular kind of relationship where I was just like, it was like a big creative brain gym. Rather than a kind of
just mind you for ideas.
That's kind of what it's like being a writer sometimes. And you don't know which ones are gonna live as well, or which ones are gonna. But I think that on shows that, like some of the stuff that I'm creating myself, I will. I go about it in a completely different way, because I'm going to be the person running the show, and so I'll need to know absolutely every single tiny corner of whatever universe I'm creating, because I need to, because I'm the one that's holding everything together. But I think it's a real gift being brought in as a writer like I was on Doctor Who, because actually I was just given a little moment to have some fun and was held within the kind of bosom of the show. I'm not sure how Chris would feel about me talking about him as a bosom, but
that's beautiful. See, that's why you're a writer. Right,
that's
there.
An image.
That's what that is.
It's quite interesting that you're talking about show running stuff and you creating things in universes and stuff.
Oh, you mean of my own stuff? Well, it's interesting. I mean, I use the word universe quite kind of loosely there, because it's not like I'm not specifically writing things that are science fiction in that way. But when I kind of create worlds, whether they're worlds within our current world or worlds within an imagined world, you still kind of have to find out what the rules are, and like what the tone is, what people do in this world tonally, and like what the kind of characters, where the edges of the characters are, and where like the kind of edges of your vision is, I suppose, as a writer. So that's kind of what I meant. But I'm working across quite a lot of different genres at the moment, which is really fun. So I'm having to kind of work out kind of literally what those worlds are, what the worlds are.
Sorry, Paul, you were just about to ask a question there.
I was actually. I was just going back to the Doctor Who stuff and this collaboration with Chris. And actually, I was going to ask why Sea Devils, but then one of our Twitter contributors, Orinoco McGee at Deadly Night, kind of phrased it a little bit better than me. Hi Ella, wonderful land parasite. I get that. There's Sea Devil's quote there. Lovely. Loved your episode. Reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean, but with epic pirate alien turtles. So what made you want to bring back the Sea Devils and place them in a pirate-themed setting?
And that kind of links into another question: was did Chris have a shopping list of stuff that he wanted in the story?
Did Chris kind of say, Ella, it's going to be Sea Devils. That's what we want in the story. Like, just put them in there. Don't care how he lives. Just get them in. Like, that's my.
That's
Chris
not how he sounds.
Definitely not how he sounds.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean it.
So I don't want to disappoint the fans, but no, it wasn't my idea to bring the Sea Devils in. In the first place, so that they were, and that was already an idea on the table. They said that they didn't have to feature, but I liked the idea of them.
Oh, right,
yeah, they were like, with what we're thinking. I kind of came into the room. It's actually really fun being able to talk about this properly now because I guess I couldn't give anything away before.
Yeah, embargoes are lifted. No NDAs now. Yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah, when we spoke a while ago, the episode hadn't aired yet, wasn't it? And you said, well, I can't really say much at the moment. So we said, okay, let's wait till it's been out then,
So, yeah, they knew that they were interested in a kind of nautical themed piece, and that it was going to be a long one, and that they wanted something at sea. They weren't quite sure where. But they didn't want it to be like a space-themed thing. They wanted it to be like an Earth-bound story. Yeah. And they had the idea of kind of inviting back this monster from the past. And that was kind of where we started. There was a kind of vague idea about having some kind of fleet of ships, possibly pirates. But we hadn't got very far yet. And then the weekend before I got the train up, I was doing a load of pirate research and chatting to some friends, and I was reading about Madam Ching, and I thought that would be really cool. And definitely had Pirates of the Caribbean music in my head whilst I was writing it, because I think even almost kind of like visually we wanted it to feel like Pirates of the Caribbean, but with a twist. And it felt really, really, really exciting to set it in southern China as well, because I think that's we haven't really visited that part of the world much, and also it just meant that kind of we could combine lots of like visuals. So it's like it could feel like Pirates of the Caribbean, but it definitely wasn't Pirates of the Caribbean. It definitely wasn't the Caribbean.
Yes, it was like Pirates of the Caribbean jacked up on sci-fi juice, the flying pirate ship with those green cylinder things underneath that were making it fly. It was such a cool image,
really
wasn't
fun
it?
Making up.
It was great.
Really fun.
I think a lot of the imagery in that story was really quite striking, because it really was a proper mishmash of sci-fi and pirate nautical adventures and history, and you had all the Asian flavours and the designs and the colours coming through. You had all the alienness of the Sea Devils, all the water, the flight. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, it's great,
think about it. All in 50 minutes or so? Not even 50 minutes.
So the costumes were amazing. The prosthetics on the Sea Devils looked great. The ship that was built, the CG work on it, but then all the character stuff on top of it. It was so good.
I thought they did such an amazing job, the CGI team and obviously the production department and everyone. Because it's a real mishmash, like you said, it's a real mishmash of kind of visuals. I think it's because it wasn't a historical ep. It's almost a shame that we didn't get to spend more time exploring that fascinating bit of history, because actually we span two time periods of Chinese history, of like kind of nautical history, and because it wasn't, there just wasn't space to really dig in, and I think that that's a shame, because I loved the research that I did for it. It's just it wasn't.
I was going to ask, did you do a huge amount of research?
Not loads and loads, but I just did. Always you gotta read, and it was one of those things that I just wanted to read about. It was kind of an amazing real life female pirate from China who was just doing cool stuff and living an amazing life. And I just wanted to spend more time with Madam Ching.
Well, and a long life apparently as well, didn't she? She lived to quite a good old age.
Yeah. Maybe one day you'll get to do the Target novel of Legend of the Sea Devils and get to expand upon it. So I don't know if you know the Target novels. They're novelizations of various episodes, aren't they, Paul? All the old classic stuff.
Yes.
But they're expanded upon, and things are enriched and go deeper on stuff. So
or if you don't have time to write it, I'll stick my hand up right now. Don't you worry about it.
It's good to know you're there for me,
very
Paul.
good at
you got my back.
There we go. Once upon a time, there was some sea devils, and they had a bit of a plan to take over the world, starting in China or thereabouts.
Yeah. So we've got some
already.
We got some tweets in, but I just want to ask one question. So
yes.
the giant sea creature. So whose idea was that, Ella? Where'd that come from?
That was my idea.
Was it
that
really?
your idea?
Oh, awesome!
Brilliant.
Well, originally, we didn't know what they looked like because we just knew that I was just calling him a sniffer dog at the beginning because as in they weren't actually going to be a dog, but it was just we didn't know what they were going to look like because we had to just work with the visual effects people. So I remember when I was beating it out, just calling it sniffer dog because it was just this idea that they had a kind of pet, a really nasty pet that did deeds for them. And one of the first images that I had for it, I remember we were all sitting in Chris's kitchen and we were thinking about how we might want to start. Yeah. And we were talking about there being, like a fisherman on a boat, and then suddenly you just see a shadow. And then, it's a kind of classic trope, isn't it, from like the beginning of Jaws, or things like that. And you just sort of see like the reaction on the fisherman's face, or you see a shadow kind of passing over, and then just nothing. And I remember we were a bit like, but that can't be a sea devil because that doesn't really work. And then, thinking I was just like really obsessed with this idea of there being something creepy in the water. Yeah. And then we had a really fun meeting with the CGI people. The Zoom. I actually screenshotted the Zoom, though obviously couldn't share it with anyone. Yeah. But it was just when they first brought their ideas, and we had all these amazing different sea creatures from like books and magazines and like other fiction. They'd made a kind of montage, and I was like, oh, maybe it's an extra of that one and that one. And like, but it wasn't really my job. I was just sitting in on the call because I thought it was cool. I didn't. They were doing their thing. They're all experts in monsters. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool, wasn't it? Yeah, we loved that. Yeah. So, Paul, do you want to go to some of the tweets that have come in?
Yes, I will. I'll start with a quite straightforward one here, which is from Dom at Domtorhu, who asks, how would you describe your experience of working on Doctor Who in a short, succinct kind of way? Pleasurable? Not so pleasurable, fun, not so fun. I don't know. How would you describe it?
I'd say it was as fast paced as the episode is.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was quick. It was fun. It was exciting. It was imaginatively stimulating, and kind of bizarre.
Bizarre, yeah.
In a good way. It's a bizarre. Yeah. It's a bizarre thing being a writer. It's a funny job. It's a funny job, and it's a particularly funny job working on something that is not like your own authored piece. So, I kind of said before, I was bringing some ideas into a space, but I wasn't seeing it right until the end, and that's space. Exactly what I knew I was doing, and because that is the job. And so I just felt really lucky, to be invited into this institution and to throw some cool ideas in and to have a play, and also to bring a little, hopefully, just a little bit of my voice somewhere. But that's not. Yeah, that's it.
So we got a quick question here from Maria Antonio, who's at Maria Ann 2290756. I always love those usernames, don't I, Paul?
You do.
What did you enjoy most about writing this episode? And that's also actually similar to a question from Courtney, who's at Time Maximoff _. She says, I really want to know what your favourite part of writing the episode was. I loved it so much, and it was so action-packed.
I remember really clearly writing the scene where they go down to the seabed. And it's I remember thinking it was the moment of calm after all of this kind of ferocious plot. And then suddenly they just get this moment of quiet. And I just imagined it being so beautiful and calm and romantic, but not even necessarily because of the, you know, other stuff that we may talk about. But like, I just mean, like, actually genuinely just it being this kind of moment of wonder.
You know what, it was, yeah. You know, the music on there, the you know, that great big shot of the TARDIS at the bottom of the ocean, and then the dialogue and the actions between the two of them there. It was a great scene, and like you said, it was that moment of calm. It was lovely.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, stealing those little moments of calm among all the action were the most exciting things. I found it really, one of the best things about writing it, was being able to engage this childish bit of my imagination where everything or anything could happen, but then also being able to pair that with these little moments of like humanity and calm. So yeah, for me the most exciting bits were those like hiatuses, in a way, and like. But yeah, I mean, I loved so much of it. I really did. I just feel like it was a yes and process, which is quite rare. Actually.
We've got one here from Sophie, who's at Sophie the Otter, who contributes quite a few questions actually, and they're all very good, aren't they?
One of her questions that we've asked a couple of times to our guests is, if you were a biscuit, Ella, what would you be? So
I know that
you can answer
straight
that
off
right
the
now.
bat.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be a Fox's ginger crunch.
Oh, I like
They're like
those.
they are
that's a
the
good
best
one.
biscuit because they are
Unequivocally.
I'm not going to have an argument about this, guys.
It's a fact, people.
They're just, you get two spicy, delicious ginger biscuits and then a bit of cream in the middle, and I just don't think you need anything else.
Can't go wrong, can you? Can't go wrong with that.
Biscuit perfection.
Anyway, Sophie's non-biscuit related question says, "Hi, I love this episode so much." That's a common theme, by the way. What did you intend for the audience to take from the scene where the Doctor skims the stone, and from the look on her face at the end of the episode?
Ooh.
Now we're getting straight into character stuff now.
Yeah, good question, Sophie.
I think it's worth prefacing this with the fact that my interpretation is only one interpretation of the episode. So it's there are things that I've written that actually the actors have their own way of interpreting it, and so does the director, and so does Chris, obviously, and then so does the audience. And and this isn't a cop out because I will answer the question, but I do actually think it's really important that for us to like appreciate the power of ambiguity in these moments. And I think it would be wrong if you thought that what the writer thought was the correct answer, because when you're writing scripts, you really are just offering up a load of ideas for interpretation, and you're not. It's quite rare that you're like, this is what it means.
Because people react to things differently, don't they? And they can read into things and receive things differently. So I think what you've just said there is very true. You know, you've got your take on it, but that doesn't make it the take necessarily.
No, and often what you're searching for when writing is a purposeful ambiguity, or a kind of like multifacetedness, so that people can, so that you're purposefully making things multidimensional, so it's a kind of self-reflective experience when the audience is watching it. So it's not supposed to be clear. That scene at the end is not supposed to be clear, and that's why I know a lot of people have been like tweeting me being like, but what does it mean? And it's like, the whole point is that you take from it what you will.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
You're supposed to watch that, and it's supposed to mean different things for different people, because I think so. I think that it's really important that for me, we are exploring the queerness of the relationship. But when I say queerness, I don't just mean I'm talking about kind of political queerness, and like queerness as a in its most true form, which is ambiguity, which is this kind of rejection of traditional ideas of sexuality and gender and of living and of relationships, and actually that a relationship doesn't have to exist in this very kind of traditional binary way. And so a relationship can be queer without anyone ever entering into a conversation about sexuality or gender, and actually it more being about kind of the fact that there is a something there which doesn't necessarily quite fit with what we expect relationships to look like, because we're conditioned by society to have this incredibly kind of traditional, conventional, heteronormative view. And so I think that for me, what's really important about that final scene is that it is ambiguous, And so for some people, they will interpret that as being a very clear indication that there's a romantic relationship between those two characters. For other people, they won't, and that's fine. And then also I think that for the characters themselves, they may not know what it is that they're feeling, and that's fine. Because we don't always have to put our finger on exactly what a feeling is. Like, relationships are incredibly complicated. They don't fit into binaries. They just don't.
And I think particularly for the Doctor, she doesn't know because, it was only the episode before when Dan said, to Yaz, why haven't you told her? And then said to the Doctor, she likes you. And there was an element of the Doctor being like, yeah, I've realised that, but also being completely kind of like, what? Sort of taken aback by it. So, I think there's an element of her not really knowing, the whole thing.
Totally, and there's a not knowing exactly what Yaz is feeling, because she's never really said it. And there's also a not knowing quite what she's feeling. And then there's also not knowing what to do with that feeling anyway, because she's existing outside of the a normal human experience. So what does one do with the feeling if it does exist in the situation that she's in? I think it's actually a perfect universe through which to explore queer relationships, actually, because everything about Doctor Who's quite queer. It's not it's not normal, as in, I say that with you can't see me, but with quotation fingers, because because actually we're given this space which is already kind of out of the ordinary, and so it's a perfect space through which to explore relationship dynamics that don't fit into these kind of culturally synthesized binary structures. I think it's important that we don't put a label on Yaz and the Doctor's relationship, and I emphasize again that that's not, for me, that's not a cop-out. I'm a queer woman, and I'm proud of that. But I think that actually what's most interesting about their relationship is its ambiguity, and because they're kind of existing out of time with each other, and out of time with the rest of the world as it is now. And I think that there's an opportunity to explore something very nuanced and beautiful, but complex. And I think that moment on the beach, for me, like, it's a kind of subtextual acknowledgement of that. But what's interesting as well for me is that I haven't seen the next episode. I was going to ask if you knew. In writing it. I'm not going to see it before anyone else. So I've got this. I'm actually in exactly the same position as you two and every other Doctor Who fan out there, because I've taken the story up to a particular point, and actually now we're all on the same level. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Don't know.
That's interesting.
And I think that
it's kind of
handed over, and I think that that's a funny feeling, but it's also right. Because I don't know what they're going to choose to do.
We're dreading.
We've all got our hearts in our mouths.
We don't want it to end.
Wondering what's going to happen next.
For many reasons,
my daughter Ashley, when she found out that we were going to be talking to you tonight, and because she does sometimes join us on the podcast, and she didn't want to join on this one, sadly, but she said, if I do, she said, I'm just going to cry. But do you know, and it's kind of what we've just been talking about here has touched a lot of people right at the core of their souls, no matter what your sexuality. I think, it's something that is so true to being human. That it transcends constraints, and it's a really, really beautiful thing, and my daughter sort of came out a little while ago, and it's like, well, we always knew, this is us. But it's like, since she did that, she's become much more confident in herself, much more understanding and knowing and sure of herself, and it means so much to see that churn of emotions and feelings represented in her favourite TV show. It means a lot.
Oh, that is so great to hear.
And it's like that scene on the beach, it kind of encapsulated all of that. And going back to what I was saying earlier about having a very fast action adventure plot driven story, and within a space of 43 minutes, you still manage to put something which is so transcendent at the core of it, at the heart of it. So the story, the true story, not the stuff with the ships and the sea devils. The true story is about that relationship between the Doctor and Yaz. And it's honestly, Ella, it is wonderful, wonderful writing. It's absolutely astonishing. To get all those things together, and for me personally, I just want to just thank you so much for bringing that into Doctor Who. It's really quite fabulous.
I really appreciate that, Paul.
That's all right. I don't give compliments that often, especially when I'm suffering from colds and things. And I need a drink. But it does bring me also to a question we have from Annie at Annie TQED, who edits The Queerness at thequeerness.com. And she's actually asked two questions. It's kind of like one question divided into two. So I'll we'll allow it. And I think it picks up quite nicely from what we were talking about. So Annie writes, you referred in the Doctor Who magazine to Yaz and the Doctor as a queer relationship. So would you agree that they are way beyond a friendship zone? And the script suggests that neither of them just want to live in the present. So was this a necessary narrative step? Which I think we've kind of more or less kind of answered. But then she goes on to say, did you realise the significance of the Doctor confessing her feelings for Yaz in that moment in the engine room, not just for Doctor Who, but for a global franchise, and hugely positive impact on young LGBT plus people it could have with its reach? And then she closes off by saying, my 13-year-old self cried. So emotional, this.
It really is. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions in there, like you said, all kind of wrapped up together. I think we are.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpick.
There's so much to unpick. I mean, you could probably do a whole podcast just on that. I think that when we first started working the episode, we were very plot focused because we needed to just get a story together. And it wasn't until there was a draft or two in that actually we had a really big conversation about what the characters were doing and what we needed the relationships to do. And then we started to weave through the Yaz and Doctor relationship narrative. And I just felt this absolute elation. I remember when they said that this was the way that we were going to go, and they gave me license to go there. Because I just thought, imagine all of the people out there who are going to feel represented through this, and particularly something like huge, an institution like Doctor Who, which has been going such a long time, throughout periods where queerness has been much less accepted and understood, and actually, like, it felt like a really important step. Yeah, and I did feel that. I think that I hadn't quite appreciated until it was aired and until people started talking about it, and until I really, really personally understood, as well as somebody who hadn't been like an avid watcher of the show previously, I started to understand the investment that people had in that relationship properly, and I really respect that, and I really kind of it made me feel like I had quite a lot of responsibility, actually, which is an interesting feeling given that I'm not running the show. Though that was also a funny feeling, because I was thinking, gosh, I haven't seen the final cut. People kept asking me questions about how the relationship was going to come out, and I thought, well, I did write that, but I can't remember. I haven't seen the production draft, and now I've cut that line, and I wasn't in control of what they cut, so I thought, well, I don't know whether that's still going to be in there. And I thought, oh gosh, what if they take the whole thing out, and then all these people are going to hope for this thing, and then it's not going to be there, and then obviously I had all this anxiety. I was like, they're going to be knocking down my door, and then I was like, what am I then doing? What's my responsibility as a queer woman? And then actually, I think that they did keep it in. So that was good.
It's been so good because the Doctor and Yaz have had such a great friendship, haven't they, Paul, across their time, and there's been all these little bits and pieces of kind of the feelings, and that's why people have picked up on it, and where the whole Thasmin thing has kind of grown from. So to see it kind of properly acknowledged recently has been fantastic, I think. And also it kind of Jodie and Mandip are so great in real life together, and they have such a good friendship that I think to kind of bring that into their characters in a way has been brilliant, really.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm aware that you probably haven't got much time left, so sorry, I've just completely cut you off there.
No,
sorry.
don't worry. No, don't worry.
Honestly,
I guess I was.
Does it all the bleeding time?
All I was going to say was that I wish it wasn't such a big deal, actually. because then it would show that we had much more representation and nuanced representation across the board in our media. And I think the fact that this has felt so important is testament to the actors, obviously, to the previous episodes, to the way that relationship has been so kind of sensitively handled over the last seasons. But I also think it's partly because we're not used to seeing these necessarily ambiguous and complex relationships explored on screen in the mainstream. Obviously there's a huge amount of incredible queer art out there. I would hate to diminish from that, and I won't, because I experience a lot of it myself, but I just mean that actually, because it's such a kind of mainstream institution, I think that's why it feels so important. And I hope there's more, and I hope it remains nuanced, because I think that, like, one of the things that's really important is that, particularly in queer relationships, whatever your interpretation of queer is, and I think I made kind of mine clear earlier on in the podcast, but it's like that actually it isn't always that clear what's going on, and so and actually they're the things I'm fascinated by, you know, that it's those spaces in between. That actually when you're working out your feelings, it's not that clear cut always, and that you don't know whether it's a very profound, deep friendship, or whether there's more to it, and that is a real experience I think that a lot of people have when they're working out their sexuality, or throughout their incredibly long changing journey of sexuality throughout their lives. You know, you meet people all the time and you're kind of trying to suss out how you feel about them.
That's lovely. So we've got maybe two quick questions here. So this is from Head Desk, who's at Miss Head Desk. The Doctor's flirting scenes with Yaz are pure brilliance. Did you have any more ideas of ways the Doctor would flirt? I would say that probably badly. For the Doctor.
The Doctor flirting.
Yeah, badly. I mean, I think we kept enough awkwardness in there on purpose. I don't think she's a natural flirter.
No.
I mean, yeah, I guess I've got more ideas, yeah. But I mean, I probably flirt as awkwardly as the Doctor, so I think it'd be quite easy for me to write that.
Well, I think it probably gave us all hope, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
Who
are not skilled in that area.
I don't have to worry about flirting now.
Well, no, that's so can we just, maybe one last question. So this is from, this is from Oscar Groucho, who's at Oscar Groucho's. Did you find that having the opportunity to tell a story at a very particular time in Jodie's tenure in the role afforded you greater dramatic latitude to really explore hers and Yaz's dynamic and the world established by Chris? And what was your takeaway of the whole experience?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because I was only ever given that episode, if that makes sense. So, like, I've never experienced what it's like to write earlier on. So I was very aware of the fact that I was writing one of her final eps, and that there would be quite a lot of gravity. Like, every choice we made would be significant. I mean, I guess it did afford me more opportunity to explore the relationship, because there was a kind of expectation to be building towards a climax that we're going to have in this final episode, but I think that I was working within particular parameters, so I wasn't I couldn't have chosen to take it in a particularly different direction. That wouldn't have been within my remit. So it was kind of like I was taking as much freedom as I could within the kind of space that I was given. But generally that didn't stop it from being an incredibly liberating and fun experience.
Brilliant.
You know, sometimes you need to have the boundaries set in order to then play.
Brilliant.
Would you write Doctor Who again, Ella?
I would, yeah, if they have me back. I mean, I definitely also, it'd be really fun. Russell T Davies is coming back, right? And it would be fun to see how a different showrunner runs it, and also just he's a legend, Chris the legend, Ross the legend. It's like, I would. I think that I would love to be involved, like in a writer's room for it, bashing ideas around, but we'll see. It's all about timing, isn't it? Like, I'm going off on my little writing journey, which is taking me quite far away from the Doctor Who world. Writers hopefully have long careers. Let's see. I feel like maybe I've just cursed myself. But like I'm planning to do this for quite a long
sure
time. As long as my brain stays working. So I'm really hoping that I'll have a chance to wind my way back again one day. Yeah.
Well, it's fabulous how it's all taken off for you. I mean, literally just exploded in the last few years, isn't it? Which is quite incredible.
Fun. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the actual
expression on your face.
I just kind of meant actually, it doesn't necessarily feel like that, But it's interesting hearing you say that because actually, really, my life is quite. I just write a lot, and that's actually quite a calm, quiet existence. I mean, sometimes I get to do fun things and go to set and film and go to different countries and stuff, but actually a lot of the time it is just quite a kind of quiet solitary process, and so it's the exploding doesn't feel like the right word. If you know what I mean, it just feels like it's quiet. It's quite quiet.
Yeah. Well, busy then. You've got a lot of projects going on.
Yeah, busy.
You're in demand, which is always fantastic.
Which is unbelievably lucky. I think at some point they're all going to realise that I'm just pretend writer.
No.
Well, we all think that in the creative world, but
imposter syndrome. That's what that is. Yeah.
Oh, it's rife. It's
rife. That you don't want to go down that road.
So I just got one quick question, which I think someone asked on Twitter as well. Did you get to visit the set when they were filming the episode, and did you meet Jodie and Mandip and John and everyone?
I did. Yeah, I visited very briefly, but it was all quite COVID-y.
Yes.
It was very COVID-y. It was, I think, the day before my 30th birthday.
Right.
I believe. Or maybe my 30th birthday gathering. But anyway, I went up and just had a day. And it was so fun, and I got to meet everyone. And it's always weird as a writer visiting set. You feel like a bit of a lamb.
It's the lot of everyone.
Well, also, you don't have anything to do. You're kind of just standing there eating catering and watching in the corner. Someone then asked me for if one of the lines in the script meant, and I was like, oh, I've got something to do. But
do you think they just said that politely?
Yeah.
I think they just did it to make me feel involved. Yeah. But anyway, it was lovely to meet everyone.
Brilliant. Well, Ella, thank you so much for joining us on Who Corner to Corner tonight.
My pleasure.
Your contribution to the Whoniverse has been massively loved and enjoyed by many people, and we look forward to seeing what comes next from you, whether it's in the world of Doctor Who or something that you're conjuring up yourself. So best of luck with everything. We look forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you guys.
Thanks, Ella. Thank you so much, and very best of luck to you. Everything that you do next.
Thanks. Take care.